That's right. You're listening to another episode of the Co-Main Event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for nearly the last 14 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Ben, we're still about a week away from UFC 324. But we got a lot to talk about as it pertains to that pay-per-view. The UFC's debut on Paramount Plus. But here we sit about 11 days removed. And Paddy Pimblett remains the betting favorite over Justin Gaethje. But let's all just sit with that for a minute.
You want everybody to have a chance for that to sink in. You don't want us to just gloss past that as if it's normal, is what you're saying.
I want everyone to take a minute to ingest and digest, because you were telling me, I saw some headlines to this effect. I did not watch the video because you know me. I have an empathy response to awkward videos that at times makes them hard for me to watch. But I understand there was some fairly cringe UFC involvement in the Golden Globes.
Now, see, I want to make it clear, first of all, to anyone in our listening audience, I am not sitting around watching the Golden Globes. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I don't want people to think that Ben is one of these guys that is like, oh, the Golden Globes are on tonight. Everybody shut up. I got to clear my calendar. Watch the fucking Golden Globes. No. First of all, I can't have that out there. Second of all, I log on to the internet the morning after. I hear people talking about like, oh, there was a UFC segment on the Golden Globes. I'm going, oh, okay, I get it. The Golden Globes were there on CBS. The UFC has this deal with CBS's parent company, Paramount now. We're going to try to like get a little bit of attention for the UFC. I hear cringe skit. And it's not as if like that was impossible for me to imagine that we had
Is
UFC
there
fighters.
any other kind of MMA skit?
It's not as if I heard that and I was like, MMA fighters in a cringe skit? That doesn't sound right. Like I could imagine that, but that doesn't even describe what this was, because to call this a skit gives it way too much credit. It wasn't even a skit. It was like they were announcing the next guys to come out were going to be the lead actors from Heated Rivalry, or as my wife calls it, the Gay Hockey Show. Now, I don't know if you've seen any of this Heated Rivalry, Chad. People talking about it.
I've never heard of any of this, whatever you're talking about.
You have heard of the Gay Hockey Show Heated Rivalry. Everybody's talking about it.
I have not heard. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
I'm not sure I believe that, but
who's talking about it? Where are they talking about it?
The culture.
I've not heard
all around you. It's all around you in the atmosphere.
Is this where can I find this show? What's it on?
I believe it's on HBO Max.
Okay, I don't have that, so maybe that explains it.
Maybe it explains why you're behind and you don't know what the culture is up to. Anyway, I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't think you'd like it.
We just spent about 3 minutes making me seem like I was an asshole because I haven't heard of it, and now all of a sudden you're like, don't worry about it. You'd hate it. You'd hate it, brother.
It's not for you. One of my female friends is really into it. She's in the group chat talking about it a lot, and so finally, me and my wife were like, all right, let's see what the Gay Hockey Show is about. Tell you what, they weren't under the impression that they needed to put a whole lot of hockey in the Gay Hockey Show. There are literal moments where they show like the two guys coming up to take the opening face-off, and then the very next thing you hear is and it's the horn, like the final horn in the game. It's like there was an opportunity here to show you some hockey, and they made a conscious choice to skip right over that so we could get to the showers, pretty much. Anywho, the Gay Hockey Show, very, very popular. People are very excited about it. They're talking a whole lot about it. And maybe they thought that's all the tie-in we need. It's sports. And so they're like, they had like an announcer be like, oh, because these next two people are so popular, we hired extra security from the UFC. There goes a cat just strolling across Chad Dundas' desk.
So while we're staying at this Airbnb,
Oh God.
while we get our bathrooms fixed, I don't have an area where I can record where my daughter's cat will be excluded from the situation. So she is making herself at home over here. Now, rest of the day wants nothing to do with me. Get out the podcast shit, start the fucking live stream, the video. It's prima donna's all over it. She wants to get her face on camera.
She knows the CME is a great launching pad for careers of all types. Anyway, they announced, like, all right, these guys are extra security for these popular things. It's UFC fighters. And I don't even believe they said their names. It was Brian Ortega and Mackenzie Dern. I don't even think they said their name. I just think they said, we got some fighters from the UFC. And they come out in the like Venom warm-up suit stuff. So it's like they're not even wearing the stuff that anybody who doesn't watch the sport would really associate with the UFC. They're very done up and everything, so it's not like they look like they're about to head into a UFC fight. They just kind of walk to the edge of the stage, look at each other, and then walk off. And nobody in the room seemed to know how the fuck to react to it, because it's certainly not funny. It doesn't even really make a whole lot of sense. Here's what it reads like. It reads like first somebody went to like a Golden Globes producer or something and was like, the big company wants to make sure we work the UFC into this show somehow. And they're like, okay, how? And they're like, it doesn't matter. And they're like, okay, but like, do we need to like put them in, like have them introduce somebody or like have them like, and they're like, I'm going to make this clear to you. We don't care. All we need to do is to be able to say we did it. So, and then it also reads like somebody who was responsible for actually like writing this part of the script or whatever was like, this sucks, I won't do it. And they're like, do it or you're fired. And they're like, fine, I'll do it as an act of protest. I'll make it awful and confusing and of no value to anyone. And that's what they ended up doing. Now, it was weird enough that even non-MMA people were talking about it the next day, but the thing they were talking about was, what the fuck was that? And I'm going to read to you, I saw this on MMA Junkie, and it was a quote from a Deadline story where they were asking the producer of the Golden Globes show, basically like asking, how'd you think it go? What was up with some of this stuff? Now, the executive producer of this thing was named Glenn Weiss. I don't know if it's any relation to Barry Weiss, who has taken over the CBS News division to run it into the fucking ground. His quote says, I'll say this, we were creating this party atmosphere. Pause there. That's what they were doing there. We had Brian Ortega and Mackenzie Dern in the Venom tracksuits to create a party atmosphere. We were trying to not just present everything as traditional award shows would present them, maybe taking a few attention-grabbing moments and all. And UFC is obviously entering a new thing with CBS and Paramount Plus, so they're all partners. So we basically decided to take two elements that are kind of hot right now. The heated rivalry, it's insane what kind of attention it's getting right now. To juxtapose it with that and create this moment together, we thought it was a fun little moment. Now, the asked further, like, so did you think it went well? He replies, I think we're getting more questions about it than anything else. So it got attention, right? Which, sure, that's one way to look at it. If you'd had Leonardo DiCaprio walk out there and take his dick out, that would have gotten a lot of attention too. Doesn't mean that it would have been good attention. Doesn't mean that people would have been like, good idea. You guys did a good thing here. So that's what I'm a little bit concerned. The reason I wanted to show this to you and be like, have you seen this? Is I'm going, all right, here we are headed into this new TV deal. We're going, this is usually when a TV partner gets very excited about the UFC. Right at the start, especially when they paid a whole lot of fucking money for it. They want to start making that money back. Towards the end of these deals, we've seen some people get a little less excited about being partners with the UFC. There's a lot of bad breakups in the UFC's broadcast history. But at the beginning, they get very excited. And we also every single time get told this is going to take the sport to a whole new level. The fighters are going to be huge stars now. We're getting so much exposure on these fighters. It's going to be great. Now, here's kind of the first thing we're seeing. and it doesn't seem great. It doesn't really even seem like they understand or respect the product at all. And it just seems like somebody told them to do it, and they're like, "Fuck, fine, we'll do something."
You're telling me you don't think this is Brian Ortega and Mackenzie Dern's big break? You don't think this is the thing that rockets them to stardom?
I mean, look, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I understand why we chose these two fighters. I do want to know a little bit about what they told them. Like, where they were like, "Okay, look, you guys, you don't get a single line. We're not even concerned with letting people know who you are. Just walk out there, look at each other, walk off." Did they go, "Okay, this is going to be good. This sounds like a good idea. Sounds like you guys really put a lot of thought into this."
I mean, I don't think it's out of the ordinary either, though, for there to be some awkwardness between the UFC and a new broadcast partner, right? Where like still trying to kind of figure out what we're doing here. I agree with you. This sounds like it was trash. Like we would have been better off not doing it at all. But I don't know, some kind of initial awkwardness until we fully break the ice doesn't seem that unusual to me.
Yeah, I guess it just seems like, especially they went, where can we put this UFC segment that we just want to stick in there and want to do the laziest possible version of it? All right, the gay hockey show, that's sports kind of. Let's put it before that, and then we'll say, hey, these are two things everybody's very excited about. Well, I mean, they're excited about the heated rivalry, that show. That's what they're excited about. The other thing is a thing where you're like, we hope you're excited because we're spending $1 billion a year to get it. So, man, we really hope people get excited about this thing.
Gay hockey show, he keeps saying.
I'll say this. Well, I mean, everybody in the world but you knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say gay hockey show. I watched, just a little bit, but then I was just like, okay, this is not, I'm not the target demo for this. That's fine. One thing I do appreciate about the gay hockey show, Chad, if this had been a show about a lesbian relationship in pro sports or a heterosexual relationship in pro sports, they would have squeezed a whole, like at least 3 to 4 episodes would have been will they, won't they lead up. In the gay hockey show, they are sucking each other off in the first 10 minutes. And you're like, yeah, that feels accurate. Like that, we just skipped straight to that. And then it's like, will they, won't they like each other as people eventually? And it was just like, that, all right, I see what they're doing. I see what they're going for.
I'm just not sure gay hockey show is the preferred nomenclature here.
Everybody
in 2026.
knows what the gay hockey show is. There's only one. It's not like they're
going to get confused. Is that what we're supposed to call it? Is it? I'm looking at the IMDb and I see what they're doing.
Okay.
I see just the headshots of all of the main characters and I'm getting a vibe, Not a ton of guys who look like they've been through the wars out there on the ice. You know what I'm saying?
Not a ton of guys with a bunch of missing teeth and scars all up and down their faces and everything. Yeah. That is a fair point that you raise. But also it just makes me like, I watched the thing and I was just like, well, I still don't have any idea what it would be like to be gay in a professional hockey league because I understand. Remember we watched that Lakers show, the thing with John C. Reilly, the thing about Showtime. The Lakers. Yes. See, it's the Lakers show. You know what I'm talking about, just the same way people know what I'm talking about when I say the gay hockey show. And it reminds me that anytime we try to do big sports events especially on TV, not even in movies with a big budget, but on like a TV show, it always comes off looking too low budget because they don't want to spend the time and money to get an actual arena and fill it with 20,000 people. And so instead, they're just going to hope you don't notice that this is supposed to be a big time pro sporting event and there's 6 rows of fans. Like we can see the ceiling above the person's head in the last row going like, yeah, as an extra in the show. And you're just like, okay, that's what it looks like.
Justin Gaethje, 37 years old, Ben. He's been out here fighting these hitters for a decade. This is a guy, he's been great everywhere he's fought. Former World Series of Fighting champ, former UFC interim lightweight champ. had the BMF title for whatever that's worth. Has had a couple of cracks at winning the actual real UFC lightweight title. And yet he rolls into this fight against Paddy Pimblett on the other side of the cage. The hype train, the star power, you got to believe some kind of fan base on the side of Paddy Pimblett. But, maybe a guy that's never really been tested at this level. And yet here you have the sharps, you have Vegas, you have the bettors. They're out here saying that this fight at UFC 324 is essentially Paddy Pimblett's fight to lose. So one of those two narratives that I just described to you is about to collapse at this event. And so I guess, Ben, for starters, I got to ask, is this line, this betting line, which, let's see here, Paddy Pimblett currently minus 225, Justin Gaethje's plus 185. Is that betting line totally insane to you, or are some of us just living in the past?
I gotta say, it surprises the hell out of me, but I gotta turn right around after saying that and say, I ended up minus triple digits in our betting segment last year.
We both did.
And I ended up
We're both glad that
digits.
shit rolls over for 2026.
I ended up minus triple digits the year before. So it's possible that when it comes to these betting lines, the people whose entire fucking job it is know more than I do about it. But I would not have guessed, if you told me when they made that fight who was going to be the betting favorite and by how much, I'd have been wrong. I feel like at least some of this, right, has to be that while people kind of treated Paddy Pimblett as, I don't want to say a joke, but definitely as somebody the promoter liked and wanted to put over and wanted to see become popular because he already sort of had an existing fan base. And that's what the UFC prefers. They don't want to really build up anybody's fan base. They want you to show up with your own. And then we saw him in some fights, and a whole lot of fighters started to look at him and be like, this guy is food. It's just a matter of who's going to get to the dinner table first. And the UFC seemed to be maybe sort of putting him in a position to be successful, as we'd say, gently. That seemed to be what was going on here, a lot of these fights. The Jared Gordon one is one where he looked exposed, where we were surprised to see him win a decision where he got hit with basically the same exact punch over and over again. And people went, there are some big gaps in this man's game. And then they turned right around that and gave him a decrepit version of Tony Ferguson, as if the UFC also realized, all right, you don't want to throw this guy in there against somebody without a name who was actually a good fighter who's going to beat him. And then it was all for nothing. And it seemed like the Michael Chandler fight, the last one he had, is where people went, okay, Paddy Pimblett is to be taken seriously. But did we get carried away? Did people get too carried? Because people go like, all right, he won a fight, looked real fucking good, beat Michael Chandler's ass. There's no other way to say that. Like, he really beat Michael Chandler and beat him up in all facets of the game. There's also some reasonable questions to be asked about what Michael Chandler has left in the tank at this point. Paddy Pimblett has fought and beaten like some names, but all of whom are a little bit longer in the tooth these days. And yet you match him up against Justin Gaethje, I could see how the odds makers might be looking at it and thinking like, all right, even if Patrick Angus Pimblett is only beating up guys who used to be good and have worn all the tread off the tires, that might also be what he's getting here.
Michael Chandler is 1-5 dating back to May of 2021. His only win is Tony Ferguson. So
the aforementioned Tony Ferguson.
The aforementioned Tony Ferguson. So you're telling me Tony Ferguson, Bobby King Green, and Michael Chandler are your last three fights. Yeah, you won them all. And like we say a lot when we're talking about these fighters, that's as good as you can do. All you can do is win all the fights. That's the best thing you can do. That's as good as you can do in this sport. But I don't know if that is three consecutive fighters that really makes me sit up and take notice. You're right that the performance against Michael Chandler was great. It really did, in some ways, make Paddy Pimblett look more like a legitimate article. But you look across the cage at Justin Gaethje, and His only losses going back to 2020 are Habib, Chucky Olives, and Max Holloway. His last 3 wins are Rafael Fiziev twice and Dustin Poirier once. He also beat Tony Ferguson and Michael Chandler, if you want to take it back a little further than that. But are we looking at, is this a styles make fights situation where people think maybe Paddy Pimblett will have the advantage in certain areas? Are we looking at this thing saying, 37-year-old Justin Gaethje, maybe not what he once was? Are we looking at this thing and saying Paddy Pimblett is better than people give him credit for? The answer to all of those questions in my mind is I don't know. And yet, we talk about all the money we lose over on our betting segment. Anymore, it kind of seems like the odds makers know what they're talking about in this sport.
I do think it'll be interesting when we find out what kind of a fight we're going to have here, because we all know what Justin Gaethje likes to do. Like we were talking about last time where Paddy Pimblett went out there and got submitted in an in-house tournament at his gym that was for charity, and a guy got him with a calf slicer, and we're like, it's not exactly a blueprint that you can see Justin Gaethje wanting to follow. Even if he was 100% sure he would win, he's not going to want to go out there, take Paddy Pimblett down, and try to calf slicer his ass. That's just not, this is not in his DNA. He's going to want to go out there and throw those bungalows. And some of what we've seen prior, especially to that Michael Chandler fight, would suggest that Paddy Pimblett would be pretty vulnerable to the bungalows. He might have a bungalow-shaped hole in his defense. And so you would then ask yourself, is Paddy Pimblett a good enough wrestler to make Justin Gaethje have his kind of fight? Because that has been really when Paddy Pimblett's been most successful prior to this Michael Chandler thing. And I don't know. I don't know if he is. I'd be a little bit surprised if it turned out that he is. I think that he might have to stand there and fight on the feet with Justin Gaethje. And, we've seen Justin Gaethje take some shots in recent years, but that power is usually the last thing to go. The chin sometimes the first thing to go, but still, Justin Gaethje could still plant his feet and throw down. Everything we've seen about him suggests that. So could Paddy Pimblett beat him in that kind of fight? My reason says absolutely not. And yet, it is possible that when you watch a guy for as long as we've seen Justin Gaethje, we watched Justin Gaethje come up back when the PFL was WSOF, and he went on like an 18-fight unbeaten streak to start his career. When you've been watching a guy that long, sometimes the memories of who that guy was at his best linger in your brain and in your decision-making longer than the guy's ability to still go out and do that. So that is possible. It also seems like Justin Gaethje and his camp are taking this as a kind of a fork in the road fight one way or another. At least that's what they say before the fight. We heard Trevor Wittman saying this, we've seen Justin Gaethje kind of saying this in interviews, that the thinking is, at this stage of your career, with one more crack at a version of a UFC title, and frankly, the easiest crack at a UFC title that you are probably ever going to get, your best hope for winning one, if you can't beat Paddy Pimblett here, then you ought to quit. That seems like what they're all thinking, or at least saying they're thinking.
Trevor Wittman's quote is, it gets to the point where we hit a roadblock. There's no way we can overcome these roadblocks anymore. He's 37 years old, and we want to be smart. We're not going to be the guy out there trying to fight for money, trying to chase cash for trauma. I care about his health, but I also care about his goals. He's goal-driven, and he's a guy that's ready to go out there, gather another belt. That's a good turn of phrase from Trevor Wittman. And then go out there and gather.
That it's just sort of lying on the ground, right?
Gather the real belt after that. So, yeah, this does seem like a situation where Justin Gaethje and Trevor Wittman are basically saying, we lose this, we're done. We're out. We're tired. That's it. We've seen that work out poorly, I feel like, in the past. I feel like even raising that flag before the fight is sometimes a bad sign, right? Like if you've got one foot out the door, you might as well be all the way out. Don't let the door hit you on the ass, right? How do you feel about? I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, Justin Gaethje, it's hard to imagine Justin Gaethje showing up for a fight and not being 100% in and ready to go out on his shield, right? It's hard to imagine a version of Justin Gaethje who shows up not 100% committed. And yet these are things that I don't really like people saying before the fight.
I mean, I don't take it as like it's something like when Henry Cejudo starts talking with genuine excitement about the duplexes he has that are about to come on the market. That's when I get worried. When a guy is thinking like, I got other stuff going on outside of fighting, and when you talk to me, you can tell I'm more excited about that than I am about the fight. Going into it and being like, this is going to be a test for me to tell me if I should still be here. That I don't necessarily think is always a troubling sign. I think that might be honest. I think it's also honest of him to go, look, I don't want to just keep going to the ballpark and keep getting paid. This is too dangerous a sport for that. It takes too much out of you. It demands too much of you. If I'm not in a position where I can be a champion, then I don't want to hang around and just keep taking hits. And to also be like, if this is as good a chance as you're going to get to gather that belt, there will not be a better chance. Just at this point in your career, like there's no way you lose to Paddy Pimblett. And at this point in Justin Gaethje's career, work back to a title shot that by the time you get back to it is more winnable than this one. This is it, Chad.
Yeah.
This is it. So I understand, like, I appreciate, I guess, like, that they're being honest with themselves about that and being like, it's going nowhere good if we can't win this one. We really ought to be able to win this one, which then ought to make it even more of a surprise, at least to them, to be a betting underdog here, because that's the odds maker saying like, we don't really see it, you know? And that I'd be like, God damn, they don't think I can beat Paddy Pimblett at this point. Like I wouldn't love that one. I am a little bit concerned with whatever's going on Justin Gaethje's neck, though, because I don't know if you saw that kind of got highlighted, and his answer, somebody highlighted a very nasty looking thing on his neck and was like, "Do you have staph?" And he was like, "No, that's an ingrown hair that got infected on my neck." Here's what I'm saying: no, it isn't.
Yeah, no, it isn't.
I'm not saying that that's staph necessarily. I'm not Dr. Joe Rogan. I don't have the eyes where I can look at it and be like 100% that is MRSA on your neck. I've had staph, I've had MRSA infections from grappling mats, and they didn't look unlike that. We've seen a lot of them before. It could be staph. I'll tell you what it's not, though, is an ingrown hair that got infected.
Yeah, I've only had one of those two things. I've had ingrown hairs. I've never had staph, and I've never had a crater of the moon on the side of my neck like Justin Gaethje had in that video. That his team put out, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think somebody else took it upon themselves to highlight some certain moments from it. So, yeah, I mean, Justin Gaethje at this point, that man has been around wrestling mats most of his life. He probably has had some experience with some communicable skin infections that you're going to pick up from those. He's dealt with it. It's old hat to him. I don't expect that he's going to freak out about it. But if you are out here dealing with a staph infection, you got to be on antibiotics. We know that has been known to mess with a guy's cardio at times, depending on how close to the fight you have to deal with it. But you're not going to tell me that's an ingrown hair that got infected. I need you to come up with a better cover story. I need you to respect my intelligence a little more. Come up with something else.
All right, here's the last thing I want to ask you about this fight before we'll talk about it more next week, I'm sure, as we actually get into a fight week. But this is not heavyweight, right? This is not a division where you can slip on a banana peel and become champion, right? BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar, Benson Henderson, Anthony Pettis, Rafael Dos Anjos, Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson as the interim, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, Islam Makhachev, Ilia Topuria. That's prior to that, Sean Shirk and Jens Pulver, whatever. But the entire modern lineage, I just read it to you, of the lightweight title in the UFC. There's not one of those guys. You can look and say, well, unfortunate things happen to this person eventually, right? But you can't look at any of those guys and be like, this guy was a bum.
Yeah.
Not a single one of them. Are you ready to live in a world where Paddy Pimblett is UFC lightweight champion, albeit of the interim variety?
Well, even right now, I don't think anybody's calling Paddy Pimblett a bum.
No, but nobody's saying Paddy Pimblett belongs on that list either.
Yeah, and that's where I think the interim variety would come into it. I think people would kind of know what to make of that, especially since the UFC reached down past number one contender Arman Tsarukyan to make this fight. I think everybody saw that for what it was. Went, okay, some combination of you're still mad at Arman and you want some people who seem more easily promotable for the early stages of this new TV deal. And so that's why you took, a good old-fashioned American brawler and Justin Gaethje and a popular guy with the Beatles hair from across the pond and Paddy Pimblett. And we took Arman Tsarukyan, humorless badass, and left him out of the picture entirely. And we went, okay, we all saw what you were doing there. And so Paddy Pimblett goes out there and wins one fight, gets the belt around his waist, gets to have a cup of coffee with a UFC belt before turning around, losing to either Arman Tsarukyan or Ilia Topuria. I think people will know how to put that in perspective. If he turns around and he keeps the belt by beating one of those two guys, I think then everybody will do a little bit of revisionist history and say they always knew Paddy Pimblett was good. All these other people underrated the guy, not me. I knew it.
I think we're getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves there, but whatever. Remember, you're listening to the Co-Main Event podcast proper. This show drops every Tuesday afternoon for free in your timelines and podcast libraries. But if you want even more of the Co-Main Event, you can find Ben Folks and myself all week over on Patreon. Hit us up at patreon.com/co-main event and get loads of extra audio and video content, as well as access to our official Discord message board where they're talking about fights and a lot of other stuff literally all the time. Another great way you could support the show is by going to comainevent.com and check out our merchandise shop. We got t-shirts, we got hats, we got hoodies, we got lots more. Stop by and pick up the best-selling Daddest Man on the Planet coffee mug or t-shirt while we can keep them in stock. We got all kinds of stuff over there. Go check it out. Just go to our website, comainevent.com, and click the link at the top right-hand corner of the screen that says shop. That'll get you in touch with us. As always, we're partnering with our friend Johnny Ashcroft on the shop. He is a graphic designer from Portland, Oregon. We can't recommend him highly enough for all your design needs. Hit him up at studiosuperconductor.com or on Instagram at studiosuperconductor. I got to do something about this cat, man. She's stopping the whole show over here. Talk about a disruptor in the media landscape. This cat's it's almost impossible to do this over here with this cat.
A lot of people have been saying that what this show needs is a cat. It's a cat just front and center to distract from whatever else is going on here.
I don't even know how I'm supposed to do this, but right now, like we always do about this time, let's do some listener mail.
Chad, did you know that Connor Story, actor from Texas who plays the Russian guy in the gay hockey show Heated Rivalry, get ready to get mad at this guy, at this beautiful man who said he got the part by going into his audition, even though they didn't tell him to take his shirt off in the audition. He was like, I know what we're doing. I know what we're looking for in terms of casting. And he did it. And then when they're asking him about what he does to train his physique, this 25-year-old actor says, I don't do any special prep. I don't do push-ups. My chest, I sound so narcissistic, is naturally rounded, so I don't really even have to try that hard. Fuck you, man. You beautiful bastard. Fuck you.
First piece of listener mail this week comes to us from our guy Akbar Tickle Goose, who writes in to say, ain't shit going on right now in MMA, so let's do some related MMA discourse. I assume two scholars like yourselves watched RAF 5, or was Big Time Ben too busy?
Wow, I was pretty busy. I was actually pretty busy. I was doing work, but thank you Thank you for making it sound like it was somehow asleep at the wheel. I saw some clips though, Akbar. Give me a fucking break, man.
Saw the clips. Sure, it would be nice if he went on the crack every once in a while. Wow, he's taking it to you.
Listen, Akbar, you got to get out there and get on the road and do some work every now and then in this job. I got to leave home. And once I do that, I can't always be on the crack. But don't worry, I'm going to have good reporting coming to you soon, so you'll know what I was up to.
Some quick thoughts and points of discourse. And since I don't think the podcast was acquired in the Paramount deal, I trust it will be unfettered.
It's for sale, though. It is very much for sale. Get at us with a reasonable couple billy.
Colby Covington wins and gives Ice a shout out. Okay, enough about him. Luke Rockhold falls to something like 1-8 in a variety of combat adjacent sports since leaving the UFC. After getting dominated in wrestling and dirty boxing, should we expect to see him in the slap league soon? Too pretty for that. In all honesty, though, I fear the only title in his future is the one for saddest MMA retirement.
Field. That's a competitive field. Yeah. Saddest MMA retirement.
Armand makes weight, doesn't headbutt his opponent, and actually shows up for a match. Maybe doing those three things can earn you a UFC title shot, but can he actually do all three again? Maybe it's not that complicated. And finally, Bo Nickel declines to wrestle a 50-year-old.
You almost said Nicole, just because we've done this to ourselves.
Then I realized most of the people listening to this probably wouldn't get the joke, so I just decided to. He declines to wrestle 50-year-old Yoel Romero due to Yoel missing weight. I'm not sure how to feel about that one. How would the co-main event gentleman advise him on his future, meaning Bo Nickel? Guy seemed like a superstar in the making, but man, it sure seems he went from future champion to a fringe top 10 guy fast. What do you have to say, Ben? What would you do for the scrappy underdog Bo Nickel?
Let's start with that one, because this is one where I do think he kind of fucked up a little bit, because he went on Ariel's show and he was explaining his thinking and not taking it when Yoel Romero missed weight, and read to you some of his quotes. It was tough. It was a tough situation. I got there in Florida, had all my family and friends down, and was looking forward to competing. Saturday morning at weigh-ins, I weighed in right at 9 a.m. I woke up around 2:03, ate and drank to get up to 2:05. Waited around 45 minutes for Yoel to get there, and he waited a while. And he was saying he expected him to be 2 or 3 pounds over and wouldn't be a problem, but he stepped on at 212. Now he says at that point he's too far over and everything, and that wrestling is about making weight, all that kind of stuff. And since he was coming down from a much higher weight to meet at 205, he just felt like that was too much. He goes on to say, this is the part that I want to highlight. People want to see me compete, which I do too, but they don't understand what it's like to be in that position. This is not fun and games. This is not a charity match. This is a professional sporting event. I came in professional, and unfortunately he didn't. It is what it is. I was ready to wrestle. If he made weight, we're going, obviously. So that's not on me. Okay, I'm not saying that it is just fun and games and it is a charity match, but it's kind of fun and games.
Kind of, right? Kind of.
It's not an MMA fight. That's the thing I'm saying. It's not an MMA fight that seems like it would really dramatically affect your health and career if you go out there, try to take a chance, and get smashed by a bigger dude. That's just not, I think, what we're dealing with there. So the way MMA fans see something like this is not exactly as a fun charity match, but they see it as closer to that than a UFC fight.
Yeah.
And so if you're taking it that seriously and just being like, I would have wrestled him if he was 3 pounds over, but there's no way I'll wrestle him if, he's 8 or 9 pounds over or whatever, or 7 pounds over or something like that. You can't be that surprised when people are like, that's a bummer, dude. You let us down. We wanted to see that shit happen. Also, because at Yoel Romero's age, it's not like he's going to be the guy who comes in for a ton of criticism for coming in overweight. People are going to be like, Yoel Romero is 85 years old. The weight doesn't come off that easily anymore. Give him a break. Get on the fucking wrestling mats with him. Now, if you've seen him competing in any of these events, you'll know Yoel Romero still looking pretty good getting off the bus.
Yeah.
Still able to get out here and get after it on the wrestling mats. So but I don't know if it's like, what are you worried about? He's going to beat you and the extra weight is going to be to his advantage. Well, okay, if that happened, then you could just turn around and be like, he had this extra weight on me, you guys. And I think people would understand that. I think that they're less willing to give you a pass when you just don't take the match. Now, I will say, when I saw some of the videos for this from coming out from this event before and after, that was when I kind of had a moment when I saw Colby Covington and Luke Rockhold talking a whole bunch of shit to Bo, and I was like, man, only now am I appreciating how little we've had to hear from Colby Covington in the last couple of years. You know, not until I heard him again, heard his voice again, did I go, oh yeah, we haven't heard from this guy in a long time, and nobody missed him. Nobody. I mean, Conor McGregor has been a ghost haunting the UFC halls only occasionally over the last like 5-6 years. And still Dana White got to answer questions about him all the time. When's he coming back? Oh yeah, is this going to be the year? Whatever. Colby Covington just kind of evaporated and nobody has asked when he's coming back. Then he shows up at something like this and you go like, oh yeah, I remember fucking hating the sound of his voice saying dumb shit.
We did get this email from Robert Ucci, who wrote in to say, hope the new year is treating you well. I was scrolling through the gram and I found a reel of Colby Covington and Luke Rockhold terrorizing Bo Nickel. And disgustingly, I found myself agreeing with Colby and Luke. And then in parentheses, he says, I feel dirty. Did you see it? Any thoughts? My initial thought is, just on its face, can you imagine a less likable duo? Just like an inherently less likable duo than Luke Rockhold and Colby Covington. That is a professional wrestling heel tag team where they both come out looking in hand mirrors while they walk to the ring, and then they get in the ring and tell all the sweat hogs in Philadelphia to shut up and let the ladies feast their eyes on these beautiful bodies. Like that's who those guys are, just without having to do any work whatsoever. Just hateable. Eminently hateable.
Yeah. And I mean, what I thought when I heard the way they were going after Bo Nickel was it felt like there was a bitterness there that did not really have anything to do with Bo, that had to do with them and how they feel about where they're at this point in their careers. So they're just like, this guy's the new hotness, but you know, he lost this fight. There's an opportunity for me to try to cut him down. But it felt like it was very much coming from a, like, I'm mad about where I am. It burns me up to see somebody else being the guy everybody is excited about and wants to talk about. And that's what it seemed to be about. I thought it was, I don't say, like, I can't say it was like ugly and crass in a way that I found surprising or disappointing, because I don't expect anything out of either one of those guys. But it did make me a little sad for them to see them doing it that way. Where I was like, is this, you see, like a ticket back to relevance? Is this how you get your name back in headlines? And it did do that. Yeah. It worked to do that. But it also was just
now, like, you got Bo Nickel calling for a UFC fight with Colby Covington.
Yeah, and
at the White House. I don't know if I have to add that. I feel like any MMA news that you bring up nowadays, you can just say, you can assume that at the White House is the end of the sentence. And
it does seem like shockingly plausible, right? I could see the UFC making that fight.
Next question this week comes to us from Babe Dirt, who writes, okay, so 2 weeks into no fights on the holidays and some slap fighting comes up on my feed on YouTube. I wasn't looking for it, I swear. And there was Forrest fucking Griffin trying to catch these fools. I mean, Jason Herzog is one thing, but come on, man. This guy made it to a title once. Didn't Dana give him Liddell's old job at one point? We have talked about this, right? That Forrest Griffin is one of the guys, or it was at one time, assigned to try to catch the falling bodies on slap fighting.
It's a head catcher.
I don't know if this was like a current event that Babe Dirt watched, but I guess I would be surprised to find out that Forrest Griffin was still catching bodies in slap fighting.
That is the question, because the one nice thing about the slap fighting as a sports property, don't you think, would be that you could be constantly just repurposing the old clips, because it's not like most people would even know that they're like, nobody is keeping up with slap fighting. So they're like, wait a minute, this is the crazy Hawaiian versus pork chop. I've seen this one, man. This is from 2 years ago. Like, no, nobody knows. So you could take those and just keep rolling them out there in the algorithm, and nobody would object to it. So I don't know. It would make me sad if I found out that wasn't just like a one-off gimmick kind of thing to try to help to bring a little bit of attention and legitimacy to the slap fighting, but it was like a every month kind of deal for Forrest Griffin, like a regular part of his job duties was to go out there and catch heads. That would make me real fucking sad, man. And I mean, the thing is, it's not that they gave him Chuck Liddell's old job. They gave him one of those types of jobs before the sale, which is when they went, all right, we're trimming the fat and you don't get those jobs anymore. And they let him keep that job because he was actually the only one trying to do something, like trying to show up and be like, put me to work. And Chuck Liddell was just like, I will walk as far as the mailbox to collect my check. And so they were just that's why Forrest got to keep that job. But then we see that did eventually come with some expectations, such as get out there and catch some heads for us, kid. And that is a little disappointing.
Next question this week comes to us from Greek Bar Asshole, who writes,
Cool.
Following on the discourse about the end of the pay-per-view era, as it is only the U.S. market that has removed pay-per-view for now, surely they'll dip their toe back in the shite for the White House card, for the shite White House card. Are you aware?
They're not saying for the shite White House card. They're saying for the shite house card. You see what they did?
Shite house. Yeah, I get it. Mm-hmm. Are you aware of any changes to fighter contracts making up for the loss of pay-per-view points? Could the UFC stiff them and say they're still getting the points just on a much smaller market? I don't think the UFC has to say shit, do they? Like at this stage in the game, can't they just sort of be like, we'll make it up to you. Don't worry. Just somewhere down the road, we'll make it up to you.
Yeah, and you can imagine how that conversation would go. It would go about, like, I remember when I was in college and I worked as a valet at a hotel, and sometimes people were staying at the hotel you'd see going in and out and everything. They'd come out and get their car, have you bring their car down and everything, and then they'd be like, I don't have any cash. I'll take care of you later, though. And you learned real quickly, no, you won't. That's like, don't stake the electricity bill money on this guy taking care of you later. And that feels like probably the kind of conversation the UFC is having. I was very interested when I saw Alex Volkanovski on Ariel's show this week, and Ariel asked him, where he was just like, what are they doing for you now? Because you're a champion and you've got pay-per-view points in the past being a champion and everything. Now here you go to defend your title on a pay-per-view. That's just not a thing anymore. And Daniel Cormier, remember, had gone out and said on one of those shows, like, oh yeah, I've seen people are getting paid now. They're getting taken care of. UFC is going to take care of them. So like, don't worry about it. And when Volkanovski was asked about it, he was basically like, that's a good question. I assume my manager is taking care of that.
Ooh. Wow.
And I was like,
wrong sport to assume your manager is taking care of something for you.
The fight is in like 3 weeks, bro. You don't know precisely what you're going to be paid for this fight that's in 3 weeks. You should know. This is prize fighting. Yeah. You should know what the prize is. There should not be any doubt about that. And if you're sitting around being like, well, I assume my manager in the sport of mixed martial arts has done all the due diligence and has gotten it all in writing, exactly what I'm going to be paid. And he has looked out for my interest and he has made these points to the UFC. No, do not count on that. Not in this sport, man. Because I remember having this conversation when the UFC made the ESPN deal and ESPN Plus announced, okay, all pay-per-views domestically, at least in the US, are going to have to go through ESPN Plus, meaning you've got to sign up for the subscription to even have the option to buy the pay-per-view. And the UFC was getting so much guaranteed money from it that made a lot of sense for them. But I remember having these conversations with managers. I think I was working for The Athletic at the time when I reached out to them for a story, and I was just like, this will lead to lower pay-per-view sales. Like, you guys realize that, right? Because Some people, you're putting a paywall in front of the paywall. And some people are going to keep jumping over all those walls, but some people are going to be like, all right, it's finally time for me to figure out this online piracy thing I've been hearing so much about. Or I'll go down to Buffalo Wild Wings, or I will watch something else. Like, you know, you're going to lose some people when you erect a second paywall. So pay-per-view sales are bound to go down, and they did. They fucking did. Everybody knows that at this point. And I remember going around and asking those guys, what are you doing on behalf of your fighters? What are you saying to the UFC to make sure that they are still made whole? Because they have existing contracts. It's in their contracts that says this is what happens when you become a champion. You get points on the pay-per-view. That's one of the main reasons you want to become a champion, is because that's when you go from just like okay money to life-changing amounts of money. Like that's what they've been fed their entire careers, is you get to UFC gold and then you get the money, then you get the power and the women, or whatever Scarface said. Like, that's what they've been trying to do. That's what's in their contracts. And now the UFC has changed the situation in a way that routes more of the money into their pockets at the expense of the fighters' pockets. What are you doing to make sure that you guys are compensated for that? And the answer from all of them was kind of like, we assume it'll work itself out. It'll be fine. Like, nothing. They were doing fucking nothing. And so if you're telling me you think your manager is just out here, did you sign a new contract? You would remember, right? You would remember if you signed a new contract with the UFC. Is it the same exact contract, except the part in there about pay-per-view points is now essentially nullified because of something they did without consulting you or getting your consent at all? Because if so, you don't have any leverage. Like, what is Alex Volkanovski going to say? Like, all right, either they pay me more money to make up for the money I'm going to lose in pay-per-view points, or I don't fight. Can you imagine what would happen then? It'd strip that title off his ass so fast, book 2 randos into the title fight. They wouldn't give a fuck, man. They'd just, like, the idea that you have an ability to even like speak up and get anything out of the UFC other than a vague assurance that they'll take care of you. We know better. We all know better at this point, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Hunter Campbell came around with a clipboard and a sheaf of papers at some point. It was just like, okay, you need to initial here and here and here. Sign right here. All right, kid, we got it. Thanks. Thanks so much. What? No, what's it say? Nah, don't worry about it. It's nothing. It's just some red tape bullshit.
Yeah, and the thing is, we've seen this before, right? Remember, we had this conversation when the UFC got rid of sponsors and signed that Reebok deal. And you had all these fighters where it's like they're under existing contract that they signed with a certain understanding of how the economic reality of this sport worked. And that reality was, okay, maybe you're not making a ton of show and win money from the UFC, but you can get sponsors. You can make a whole bunch of money that way. There were plenty of guys for a long time there who were making more in sponsors than they were from the UFC. Some guys would even tell you that it was part of their negotiations with the UFC. The UFC would be like, all right, we know the numbers aren't what you wanted, but all your fights will be on the main card of a pay-per-view, which means like you can turn around to sponsors and you'll get more money from sponsors that way. Like, we won't bury you on Facebook prelims or whatever. Like, people were signing contracts and agreeing to deals with that understanding. And then the UFC just went out on their own and was like, oh, by the way, we're not doing that anymore. We found a way to get paid directly from that shit and cut you out of the thing entirely. So this is what we're doing now. Their contracts didn't change. The language in their contracts just stayed like exactly the same. And so it's just like, you now have lost a revenue source. They didn't really give you anything back. They gave you $2,500 from Reebok or whatever and some free shoes, free tracksuit with your name on it, maybe spelled even correctly some of the time. And that's it. Like, they didn't really push back on it. And I remember at the time, some managers and people who were involved in one of those early unionizing efforts were saying to me, that was the moment when the UFC realized we can do anything we want. We can push these guys around and they won't really push back. Cut to now, 2026, where you see Alexander Volkanovski being like, I actually don't know what I'm going to get paid. I hope that my manager has figured out a way to make it so that I do not see a huge pay cut while I'm defending a UFC title now. I don't know, man. I think you're probably going to see a pay cut.
That's going to do it for listener mail this week. If you've got a question, comment, or concern that you want to air to the podcast in future weeks, you know how to do it. Go to the website, co-mainevent.com. Click the link at the top of the page that says email the podcast. That'll get you in touch with us. Speaking of UFC funny business, we got these quotes from Laura Senko that we wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about, and we will do that right after this. All right, Ben, you sent this to me right before we started recording, and these are quotes from Laura Senko, UFC broadcaster, ESPN broadcaster. I don't know how we are considering Laura Senko at this point. What an employee of where? We don't know.
Well, hey, I mean, this reminds me, before we started getting into this, did you see another story? I think this was one from the New York Post, which it was like ESPN cutting a lot of on-air talent after, or making a lot of moves to get rid of on-air talent after the UFC moves to Paramount. And you see the list of names, and it's just all the UFC's people. It's like John Anik and Daniel Cormier and Michael Bisping. And it was just like, well, yeah, of course, those guys are going to go over to Paramount now because they were never ESPN's people. They were UFC's people. Maybe their checks said ESPN on them, but we all know what that is. And so, like, yeah, I think that pretty much lifted the veil, and we can just say Laura Senko, UFC broadcaster.
I believe she's talking to Mike Bad to the Bone here from MMA Junkie. She says, quote, this is Laura Senko says the trend of boring fighters getting cut from the UFC is going to continue in 2026. There will be more quote unquote violence. That is from the Home of Fight Twitter account. She says, quote, I think the trend is going to continue to be violence. There is so much talk now around rewarding violent fighters and rewarding finishes and the striving for finishes. I think that there is this feeling in the atmosphere that with this new broadcast partner, we need to show these people what fighting really is. We are going to have a new audience without this paywall. So this actually dovetails with a lot of what we heard about the UFC and from the UFC throughout its modern lifespan, but particularly maybe like a decade or so ago, and I guess more than a decade now, when we were still under Fertitta control, and we used to call the fight night bonuses knockout of the night, submission of the night, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point they changed those to performance of the night bonuses. Fight of the night bonus still exists. And it was thought at the time that maybe that was a cover your ass kind of move, that we didn't necessarily want to call the post-fight bonuses knockout of the night bonuses anymore, just in case at some point someone was like, hey, these guys financially incentivized each other to inflict brain trauma on each other.
Yeah, I think it was actually not too long after the NFL was settling some of those concussion lawsuits as well. And so we all kind of went like, oh yeah, maybe somebody in legal finally got around to being like, this could look bad.
So the overall sentiment here is no different than a lot of what we've heard in the past, but it is curious to me to put such a fine point on it, to say, we just got this new broadcast deal with this new broadcaster, so we need to have some fucking exciting fights to make it worth everybody's while. Like, that's, if you're one of the guys who has to go out and have those exciting fights, I don't know, man, that would be yet another instance where I would feel a little uncomfortable, frankly.
Yeah, it is also just a little bit weird, because you're right, we have had these conversations in a bunch of different ways over the years, especially when we were like, are we making rules changes or putting pressure on referees to incentivize more stand-up battles and less ground fighting, where we kind of asked ourselves, are you at some point putting your thumb on the scales and making this sport into a different thing than what it was? Are you just sort of like trying to reshape the sport into what you think is the most sellable version of itself, which is of course why we moved away from a lot of the early stuff of very few rules, no rounds, no time limits, all that kind of stuff was just a nightmare for TV and marketability. And so we moved to something more palatable. It is interesting though, because some of us have looked around recently and seen some fights where we're going, hey, why didn't Movsar Evloev get a title shot here? Why are we not giving the title shot to number one contender Arman Tsarukyan. And then when you hear stuff like this, you could, if you wanted to, draw a line saying like, oh, does the UFC think these guys stylistically are not what we want the UFC to be, not what we want to show to our TV partners, especially in the early days when we think we might be courting a new audience, all that kind of stuff. Do we want to see just stand and bang bro kind of fights? And I don't know, I'm curious about what we mean about like incentivizing, because it's one thing, like, are we offering them more money to fight a certain kind of way? Or are we just cutting people who don't fight that way? Because I don't know if that's incentivizing as much as just like de-incentivizing some styles of fights. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And we heard stories like this going back a long time. I think it was even maybe in conjunction with the class action lawsuit at some point. Guys were telling stories about Dana White showing up backstage to give like pre-fight pump up speeches, essentially the do you want to be a fucking fighter speech, but backstage at a UFC pay-per-view, where basically they're saying, let's go out there and give the people a good show, boys. Let's leave it all out there in the cage. Which is, putting your thumb on the scale for sure in a certain kind of way. And now, if I'm hearing this now and I'm a UFC fighter, basically what is being told to me is we as the UFC are making a shitload more money for this new audience. And so we want you to go out there and have an exciting fight, go out on your shield and everything else. But am I getting paid more money? Because all signs point to no.
Yeah. I also think that it's worth pointing out, remember the now famous Dana White video clip that we might not think of the context of, where he turns to the camera and says, that's fucking illegal? Do you remember what that was?
No.
It was trying to get Seth Petruzzelli. It was a rumor that Elite XC had tried to get Seth Petruzzelli to forego takedowns against Kimbo Slice and just stand there and bang, and that maybe they offered him more money to just fight that kind of a fight. That's fucking illegal, is what he said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to some extent, this has always been a thing going on in MMA, is like, how do we want it like to look? What's the best version of the sport? All that kind of a thing. But if we're going through the roster and being like, all right, we got to put on a good face here for Paramount, at least at the beginning of this deal. And we might be looking around at some guys and being like, you're an outstanding grappler. You're great at taking people down and exerting your will in that. We also have decided ain't nobody want to see that shit, bro. I don't know if that's a step in the right direction necessarily. Like, it's always going to make me at least a little uncomfortable when the promoter is starting to make these decisions, especially when we've gotten to a point when there almost is only one place in the world to do this sport at a high level. It's not like there's a whole bunch of other alternatives out there that are seen and treated as like very high level MMA. It's kind of just the UFC at this point. And if you're telling me that there might be some people who are absolutely great at the sport of mixed martial arts as the rules are written, but won't get a chance to show it just because we don't personally like their fighting style, I do think that would kind of suck.
That's going to do it this week for the Co-Main Event podcast. Like I said before, Ben and I will be on the Patreon page the rest of the week. Hit us up over there, patreon.com/co-main event. We'd love to see you. We'd love to have you. We think you will have fun. If you don't do that, we'll see you right back here next week. We appreciate the support, everyone. Thanks for listening. As for right now, we are done. We are through. We are out.
Chad, did you know that the rivalry in Heated Rivalry was partly inspired by the NHL competition between Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin?
Okay. Yeah, partially inspired.
See, why couldn't we have got an actor who was a little less pretty boy and a little more Alexander Ovechkin, grinning like a little boy to show you all the teeth he's missing, but is very excited to just get out there and play some damn hockey anyway?
I'm not surprised. I'm watching the trailer now where they actually are showing a fair amount of hockey.
That's all the hockey that's in the show is in the trailer.
I'm not surprised to hear that. It reminds me a little bit of the old TV show Glow, right? That was a purported to be about women's professional wrestling. in the 80s, and turned out that like they were very interested in some plot lines, but the wrestling was not one of them.
There was more wrestling in that than anything I've seen of hockey in heated rivalry.